the place of Kenji Yamamoto, and you have to compose for this particular section. But anyway, moving on to the next thing. I've been talking about that long enough. Again, I think Prime 1 captured the whole visuals and music thing a bit better than Prime 2 did. That's the only thing bringing down Prime 2. People would love Prime 2 if it just had more variety to it. That doesn't even mean big, drastic, different biomes that lend itself easily to variety. Just taking that time to find different ways to introduce different kinds of decay and bleakness that Aether has. Something like that. But yeah, I really like the boss theme for Emperor Aang, the I really like that. Bum 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 ba da 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 bum 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 da 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 bum 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 ba da da da. I like that. I like that a lot. But anyway, I don't have much more time to keep talking about Prime 2. So I am going to move on to Prime 3. What else do I have in my notes? I've been going for a long time. Well, I just have to make a part 3. Let's see. Oh, I did want to talk about... Oh. Maybe when I go to talk about Prime 4. Or you know what, maybe I just stop here. How long have I been going? Let's see. Okay, I'll go for maybe 10 more minutes. And then I gotta stop. And I guess this whole time was just me talking about Prime and Prime 2 in terms of how many games I've covered. Let me go a little into Prime 3. I do have a point that relates to Prime 2, but I can get into that when I talk about Prime 4. But, let's see. I did want to talk about some concept art for different Metroids. There's this particular Metroid concept art I'm very, very fond of, and it's this Metroid where it's mutated from Phazon, and it's just like stuck on the ground, and it can't fly it looks like a deflated bag, and it can't fly anymore. And its usual Metroid teeth have like elongated into these spindly arms, and it's just like stuck on the ground, having to drag itself across the floor. It's this particular concept art. They never actually made it, but there's just something about that. Just like a really grotesque Metroid. Just another version of a larval Metroid, and it's just stuck on the ground. It can't even fly or float. It just has to drag itself across with its like hooks. That's very compelling, I think. But anyway, on to Prime 3. That's gonna start getting into the discussion about the Galactic Federation, but maybe I save that for later when I talk about Prime 4. I only got 10 minutes, so let me talk about Prime 3's music to end off, and then I'll get into Prime 3 proper, because I've got a lot to talk about Prime 3 with. Like, let me write this down: art design, accessibility, the paradox of its accessibility. What else? Castor Dane. I like Castor Dane. I'm gonna write that down. Aurora unit. very annoying. I do not like the Aurora unit in the slightest. Let's see. Protect the bomb missions. Ugh. Ugh. Let me write that down. The music breaking itself. I'll talk about that here in a second, actually. Let me think. Sort of like surface level emotions and connections with the other bounty hunters. I'm gonna have to think about this more deeply because there's points I wrote in relation to Prime 3 that are that I may just want to talk about next time. Is there anything else I can think about? The art design is something I do in part ways have something very positive to say, and in part ways I'm not. It has elements that I'm fond of and elements that I'm like about. But is there? Let me think. Let me think for a second. I'm thinking. No, okay. I'll just talk about Prime 3's music for now. Of all the three Prime games, Prime 3's music is. It's. It's the weakest to me. Prime 3's music is the least experimental of the three Prime games. It's unlike Prime 1 and Prime 2's music. Prime 3's music is very polished, it's very refined, it's very produced. Like all the timings are right. It doesn't tend to veer off into strange directions. It doesn't give that same feeling of like a guy at the of Kenji Yamamoto at his workstation, just like pressing keys and like messing around and coming up with strange sound. Prime 3's soundtrack is very. It's very. It's very produced, very refined, very. The one track, Prime 3's opening theme is very oddly low quality. It's like the instrument choices are just like it's. I really like the ending bit of Prime 3's opening where you have those kind of like eerie female voices going like and it has this very. It's like I wish I would have isolated that aspect and turned it into the whole opening theme and expanded on that, but it's just. This is along with the rest of Prime 3's soundtrack. But Prime 3's opening music, for me, has the same issues that a lot of Prime 3's cutscene music has. Well, one thing is how many extended cutscenes. Again, it's from how cinematic the game is trying to be. I guess I'll say now, Prime 3's music breaks. Metroid's music breaks under the weight of how cinematic it's trying to be. Especially during those. Just along with the what makes Metroid Metroid. Metroid's Prime's music breaks under the weight of trying to be the military, excursion, sci-fi, and even though Prime 3 has its moments where you're alone again, the underlying feel of it, the tone of it, the context of it, the package it's wrapped in, the execution is not the same vein as what Metroid does. It's less like wandering into a strange place, going where you're not supposed to, uncovering something before it can explode into a bigger problem. When it's in its embryonic stage, Prime Three's missions are more like watching Mission Impossible, and it's the scenes when they're not in a briefing room and they're out doing something. It's way more of just like, how would I describe it? Espionage, tactical. It's more like a stealth military operation, if that makes any sense, which completely changes the whole tone of it. Even Metroid Fusion didn't have that tone to it. Metroid Fusion, I feel, is the proper way to evolve in that more narrative direction. What Prime 3 does is not that. What Prime 3 does is it's like, this mission if you choose to accept it. It has that kind of feel to it. You're in a stealth military operation. You're like in a Black Ops kind of thing, rather than being a hunter. There are ways to, and Fusion successfully did that, of showing that you can be adaptable and do other things with Metroid. But Prime 3's, for me, it just doesn't work with what Metroid is. The context, the wrapping it, the underlying tone of it changes how you approach mentally the entire scenario. So yes, while you are literally alone and no one's talking to you, that's like the difference between the way I'm alone in my where I live right now, versus if I was alone in the middle of the street or alone in a city I've never been in before. Yes, I'm literally isolated and by myself. But you can't call that the same as being isolated in, like, the library or in a building, or isolated because you've been sent to go somewhere. I'll get more into that later. But the music, especially in those scenes where there's like Galactic Federation military conflict with space pirates, or there's like these big action set pieces, Metroid's music is breaking under the weight of doing this. Suddenly he's like selecting sound libraries and sound fonts to try and be big and cinematic, and it's just like, ugh. That's actually something I will say he gets a lot better. Kenji Yamamoto gets a lot better at that in Prime 4. But also, Prime 4's opening cinematic thing it's not in the same vein as the way that Prime 3 is cinematic. But Prime 3, it's like you can feel the soundtrack breaking under the weight of trying to do something that it was not made for. It's trying to take a wrench and use it as a screwdriver, and you're just stripping and scraping the poor thing away. It's like it wasn't made for that. Trying to get like trying to fit a square in a circle, and the circle isn't big enough that you can just drop the square inside of it. It's just using something that's not made for. You're breaking it in the process, and you can hear it screeching and grinding, and it's like, that's not a good noise. Should we stop? But Prime 3's soundtrack, it's like, especially during the cutscenes, it's like, this wasn't made for that. But, I think it's clever how in Prime 4, how he uses that extended CD version of Super Metroid's intro with the da-da-da-da-da, la-da-da-da-da. That was really smart, because it gave him a basis to create something cinematic with, plus more time to practice with it and get experience. But anyway, with Prime 3's soundtrack, besides the music that kind of breaks itself trying to be cinematic, Even with like Gore's theme, the da 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 ba da 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 da, or with Gendrada's theme, it's like it's like I'm gonna find a way to better explain it when I get to next time. But well, another thing that's very noticeable about Prime 3's soundtrack is just how short almost every track is. We're talking down to 15-second loops. Dun 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 dun. With the Reptilicus. And it's Prime 3 soundtrack in general is a lot closer to how 2D Metroid music is made. It's very refined. It's less airy. It's way more just like... It's almost tacky. I would describe it as being tacky. There are rare... Like Elysia. Elysia is the exception to this. Elysia feels like a proper evolution of Prime 1 to Prime 2, Prime 3. But so much of Prime 3's soundtrack is just like surprisingly short. Up to, at most, it'll be like a minute. But just like 15 second the bow down 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 bow down 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 bow down 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 bam bam bow ba dun down and then it just loops again. And it's like I like that track even, but I'm just gonna acknowledge it is short, and it just it doesn't do much. I mean, you go to like Prime 1 battle themes and Prime 2 even, and like they'll develop, evolve in strange ways, kind of capture an odd tone. They'll focus, then like space out all of a sudden, and as much as I don't like the Space Pirate battle theme, there are parts of it that I like. Because, it goes on long enough to develop and go in interesting directions. And, like, almost every boss theme in Prime 1 and Prime 2 does that. They'll like, take a minute to space out, go in, try and capture the... Flogra's theme. Bum 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 bum. Stuff like that. Ha. They'll take time to do that kind of stuff. But Prime 3, it's almost like it loses so much of the personality, and it almost becomes tacky, and it loses so much of its elements, and it's like just gets boiled down into like it's like when you overboil soup and you're just left with like the scraping at the bottom of the pan. That's how I would describe so much of Prime 3's soundtrack. It loses a ton of character and like overcompensates in the most... It's like smacking you in the face. I don't know how to best describe it. It's like really opaque, smacking you in the face, just blunt, kind of tacky and garish. Whereas with Prime 1 and 2, I come into it, I'm like, what is this? And then, like, after repeat listens, I start getting into it. I'm like, okay, I feel it. Like, yeah, I get this now. even if it's like overly simple in some cases, and it just feels like he was like hitting chords and like, okay, descending chord and then the lower note, and like basic patterns. It grows on you, and you get the feeling like, yeah, this is a little like, it's a little cheesy sometimes, but you grow into it, and you get the feeling, that. But with Prime 3, like for me, no matter how many times, even more so as I listen to it more and more, there are a lot of tracks where I start out feeling like, okay, this kind of get, and then I listen to it more, like in a month or like a week later, and I'm just like, you know, it's it's just kind of garish. It's a little tacky. It's it's not. It's lost a lot of the flavor, the taste, the broth. It's There's got to be a more concrete way to explain it. I can only go with the feeling of it right now, but and just like I'd say on an objective level, one, the tracks are way shorter. Two, they're way less spaced out and airy. Three, they're way more definitive in their sounds. Like the mixing is a lot clearer, the timings are a lot sharper, the instrumentation is a lot more like a lot more just like the instrumentation's just a lot more what's the word? Blunt, clear, if that makes sense. It's the sort of breaking its own tone, less atmospheric overall. It's less experimental, more. Again, I'm gonna have to go out of my way to just find more ways to think of this, but it's there. There are objective measures of the way that Prime 3's music is different, and that goes into how it affects its relationship to the rest of the game. And it's funny to me that there's a reason that the music that sticks out and people remember the most from Prime 3 is Elysia, mainly. Because that one's the most. It feels like a real proper evolution, where it's clearer and the instrumentation's cleaner than Prime 1 and 2, but it also keeps that experimental developing nature. That's something I feel the first few tracks of Prime 4 do very well. The opening cutscene theme, the Fury Green themes. I really dislike the name Fury Green. Anyway, the Fury Green themes, you know, the da 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 da. Yeah, Prime 3, one is he found, like, not Prime 3, Prime 4, he found a lot better quality instrument libraries that have a lot less noise in them. And just Prime 4 finds that sweet spot of evolving the. Again, it's only like the first few tracks, though. It's not even like the majority of the tracks. But a select few of Prime 4's tracks feel like a proper evolution, where they keep that, like, the track is long, like 3 minutes, and it keeps evolving and changing. But at the same time, it's not as noisy and kind of like hazy as Prime 1 and 2 tracks could be a lot of the time. It has more of a definitive sound, and it's more produced, but you also still have that feeling of like that person experimenting and playing around and performing, especially with the whistle sound in Fury Green's main theme. The it has that. It still has that evolution. It feels like a proper evolution of it being clearer, more more technically sound, but still having all the elements that make like Prime 1 and 2. But the evolutions that Prime 3 brought with tracks like Elysia and things like that. But yeah, Prime 3 soundtracks in general just shorter, more produced sounding, but lacking in a lot of character. Just in a general sense across Prime 3 soundtrack. Kind of like garishly colorful, but not in an appealing way. Okay, I'm gonna stop here because I've been going on. I'm going to have to make a part 3 to this whole thing where I talk about Prime 3 in like a more proper sense, then get into Dread, Prime Hunters. I don't know if I even have time to talk about all the things I want to talk about with Other M. I don't even think I would go into the issues with Other M, just how I would change Other M. But yeah, next time Prime 3, Prime Hunters, and I'm probably going to go with Hunters after Prime 3, even though it came out after Prime 3. Hunters will have its own thing. But yeah, Prime Hunters, Prime 3, Other M. I'm not going to really talk about Federation Force or Samus Returns much. If I talk about Samus Returns, it'll probably be in relation to Metroid Dread. Or maybe just a few things about like the art design of Samus Returns. I'll think about it. I'll have time to think about it. But yeah. That's it for now. I gotta upload this. I have things I want to do, and it is late.